To start our mix and match projects, what we're going to do is we're going to go and print out all of our templates first. Now these are the templates that we're going to use to design our quilt. So you can see when you print them out that there's different sizes. We are using the A size. We want to use the largest of all of the templates. So the first thing you want to do is make sure that you're printing out the correct size depending on what machine you have and how big your largest hoop is. So in this case we're doing the A size. This is going to give us an 8-inch square. So once we print these out, you can see that these are actual fabric. So now I'm going to go through and use my scissors and cut out all of the different shapes so that I can go through second and arrange them and get my quilt pattern designed. You want to make sure that you have enough of each pattern, so you may need to print more than one copy of this. So I'm just going to use my scissors and go through and cut out all of my different shapes. Now that we have all of our templates cut out, we're going to do the fun part, which is arranging our quilt. So this is what we do in the office so that we know how large the quilt's going to be and what exactly we want it to look like. So you want to make sure that you're using the size that you're going to stitch in, and we can sit here and lay out our corners. So you can take the different pieces and you're going to arrange them like you would any other type of design. So we're going to put things together. You can use transition pieces in between all of our blocks. If you're using a transition piece, you need to use a small square for the center. That will act as the joining square for these transition pieces. So the nice thing with these templates is that you can go through and lay out your quilt and get it exactly how you want it to look before you start stitching anything together. You'll have an idea of what you want it to look like. So this is one example. You can do this with a bunch of different fabrics, and then you'll have an idea of what this quilt will look like. You can start with a corner and arrange that, and then you can lay out your full-size quilt so you'll know exactly how large it will be. Once we have everything laid out, then we're going to go through and count our blocks to make sure that we embroider enough blocks to make the entire quilt. So I'm just going to go through now and show you some different layouts. We also have several layouts in the tutorials, so take a look there and you might see something that you like. So some of the templates are actually in a diamond shape, and what this is that we've taken the regular large square and we've rotated the design so that it's at a 45-degree angle. This way all of your blocks will be on point as opposed to being in a square. So when you use these blocks, you need to use these large squares that are on point, and then we've also created triangle pieces. These will go through to square off your diamond shapes so that when you're going to finish your quilt, then you have a rectangle or a square to go and finish your binding. So the other thing that you want to make sure is that if you want to use these on point squares, is when you load them, you want to make sure that you rotate your design 45 degrees so that once the block is finished and stitched, your design will be facing the right direction when you put these in your quilt. So I'm going to go through again, and I'm just going to start laying out my blocks in different design patterns and get to where I think that there's a quilt that I would like to stitch. Now that we have an arrangement that we like, I want to show you a couple other options. So in this arrangement, we have a large square. Now in place of this large square, this will match with my other large squares. We can always use 4 small rectangles. I can make these 4 different colored fabrics, and if I stitch those one across another, they will all line up and be the same size as this large square. The other option I have for a large square is to take 4 of the medium-sized squares, and I can do those in 2 different fabrics and make like a checkerboard pattern with that instead. So these are some different options even once I get my final layout that I can still go through and arrange depending on what type of fabric, how many different fabrics I want to incorporate and things like that. So I'm going to remove these because we do have our final layout. So this is the layout that I'm chosen that I like. I would suggest once you get your layout the way that you like it to take a picture of it. This way you can reference it later on to make sure that you have all the pieces. Now that we know exactly how many pieces we need, the great thing about these templates too is it's also going to give me a rough idea of how large my quilt will be. This is a finished size block. This does not include seam allowances. So once everything's sewn together, this is about how large it will be. So I can visually look at this and decide, do I want my quilt to be bigger? Do I want it to be smaller? And rearrange them again to get an idea of exactly what I want. Now that I do have this all laid out, I'm going to go through and count my pieces. So I'm going to start with my large squares. I see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 large squares that have folded fabrics. Now these designs are perfect for merging an additional embroidery design on top of that. I'll show you how to do that in a later step, but just know if you want to put embroidery designs, these large squares are perfect for that. So I have 5 folded fabric squares. I have 4 large squares that are not folded fabric. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 large rectangles that are acting as my transition blocks. I have 4 medium squares. Those are in the center of my transition blocks. Then I have my border. So on my border, I have 4 of each mitered corner. Remember, there is a right and a left mitered corner that make the right corner. So you need to make sure that you're not doing 8 of one, but you're doing 4 of one and 4 of another to make a square. And then I also have these large rectangles, which are part of my border. So these are going to be a different fabric from my transition pieces on the inside, even though they're technically the same shape. So now that I've counted everything up, I'm going to make a tally, and then the next step is going to be to gather our materials and pre-cut all our fabric.